episode of Three True Values. We have crowned a national champion in the sport of college basketball. That is right. Florida lifts a trophy on Monday night. They take down Houston 65-63 in what was an incredible basketball game. We will break it all down here in this first segment. We will talk through the ups, the downs of the game. Houston leads for much of the time. Florida gets it done. We'll break down how they were able to do it, what unfolded on the night, and of course, throughout the course of the season for both of these teams that clearly put themselves right at the top of the heap this season. It was such an incredible year. And of course, leading into this national championship, we also had two Final Four games that were pretty much instant classics as well. The Final Four as a whole was outstanding this year. So in the second segment, we will go back and just revisit those a little bit. We'll kind of recap the storylines of those first two games and the Final Four as a whole, how great of an event we got this year, despite some early complaints from people around the country questioning what may or may not come of the way the first weekend went. And we will wrap things up in the third segment with the way to early rankings in 2025-26. That's right. We're going to put a bow on this season. We are going to celebrate it. We are going to look back at it, and then we're going to look forward. We're going to go ahead and already start talking about next season. It's never too early to do it, never too early to rank teams. I'll walk you through my method to breaking down who sits where and walk you through where I have teams entering the off season. So without much further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk national championship. Florida, of course, walks home with the title 65-63 over Houston. Huge win for the Gators, third national title all time, first since 2007. So I think you can draw a couple of parallels to that team. It was a really deep team, a team that had a versatile front court that could throw different looks at you depending on who they had out on the floor. Of course, had some star guard play as well, and some young talent really blossoming at the right time. For Florida, this run has been all about Walter Clayton. Through March Madness, it was the Walter Clayton show. He was averaging just insane numbers, raising his draft stock along the way. Anything you could ask him to do, he was doing it. He was knocking down shots from the perimeter, getting to the free throw line. He was knocking down every big shot he took, it felt like, throughout the course of the game, holding up on defense enough to keep him out there for sure, and answering plenty of questions about his professional future and what those prospects looked like. But let's not remember that coming into this season, coming into particularly this tournament, the note on Florida, what I had pegged for them was that, yes, they had probably the best starting lineup in college basketball. Top to bottom, 1 through 5, this was probably the best starting lineup that we saw. But it was also 6 through 8, 6 through 9, the best group in college basketball as well. This was a team that just had more depth than anyone around it. They had more looks that you could throw at the opponent as a result, and it proved extremely helpful in some of their biggest games in the NCAA tournament. Of course, they pull away against Maryland after surviving against UConn. They then have to mount a comeback against Texas Tech. This was not the easiest road that we have ever seen a national champion go down, especially with UConn dominating over the past couple of years. So Florida then gets to the Final Four. They take down Auburn. We'll talk a little bit more about that game in the second segment, but let's focus on the national championship game, where they came out and I thought they absorbed the Houston punch early. Looking at this Houston team, looking at their path to the Final Four, of course, the ability to come out and just suffocate the opponent has been their MO. It has been what helped them get off to these good starts. Against Tennessee, that is how things went. They just cut off the well. There was no offense for the Volunteers. Against Duke, they had to take a little bit different of an approach, ended up having to scrap and fight their way back, but they were still able to shut down that Duke offense when they needed. So when Florida came out, they struggled from beyond the 3 point line. Houston did as well. So there was a little bit of concern there that, uh, you know, if you're on Florida's side, you think, okay, yes, we're kind of sticking in this, but they're also missing shots. And if you're Houston, you say, man, we're in front, but we really should be a little bit further ahead. We should have knocked down a couple of these shots. But I don't think that this was a bad shooting night for just both teams. This was not some kind of bad offensive performance. Particularly, I thought through the first half, it was some of the best defensive basketball that we will see. I mean, it was incredibly schemed. The intensity that we were seeing on closeouts, on box outs, the ability to get to the glass offensively and defensively, it was a war down there every time the ball came off the rim. We were seeing tip outs. We were then seeing scrambles back to your defensive assignment. And I thought that it was handled just beautifully on both sides. We saw, of course, Walter Clayton not make a shot in the first half because Houston dedicated themselves fully to shutting him down. And the power forwards are going to deserve a lot of credit from Houston when we talk about this. JoJo Tugler and Javier Francis. Because the way that Houston essentially eliminated him from the offense for very long stretches was when Florida wanted to get into some kind of pick and roll action, pick and pop action, whatever it was, they were showing Walter Clayton a double team. But they were not just showing him a double team, because you can show a double team and stop the ball, or you can extend it out across the 3 point line. So Walter Clayton was having to read where the defense was going to allow him to go. And it was never going to be towards the basket because they have such great athletes, so much length on the other side of that screen, and were fighting so hard to get over it that it was resulting in him only having horizontal movement available. So Walter Clayton then, he takes a couple of deep threes. He can't get him to go. He decides, I think rightly, I've seen some people say he's got to be more aggressive. He had to go downhill. But remember, against this Houston team, the worst thing you can do is panic. And we saw a little bit of it from Florida. We saw some turnover issues take over. We saw them get almost to double-digit turnovers in the first half. So what Walter Clayton did to avoid that, to keep this Florida team in the game, I think he deserves a lot of credit. And he identified it pretty early, and it was still a struggle because, of course, it's not how he wants to play. It's not how he is best suited to play. But he made reads. And it has been a large criticism of him. It is pretty much the thing. If we're talking about Walter Clayton in an NBA draft context, why he is not a lottery pick. It is because of his court vision, his passing ability out of different situations. He does not particularly see the court at an elite level. Now, an elite level is a pretty high ask, but you're asking this guy who is a little bit undersized. We saw that against this big athletic Houston team, was able to be pushed away from the rim a little bit. You're now asking that guy to read smaller spaces because bigger athletes are going to be coming through those gaps. So it's going to be necessary for him to make different reads throughout the course of his career if he's going to be on the ball, which, of course, is the clearest path to him becoming his fullest self. Because A, he's really good with the ball. B, is that at his size, it is much easier to play him in that role. So that's what Houston set out to do. What it resulted in, and why Florida was able to stick around through that first half, is that with that action so high, there was a real premium on Houston to communicate when that role was being let go. And they struggled early. You saw it in transition. where they were committed to picking up Walter Clayton high. You saw it in the half court, where, of course, they would get off of these screen actions. You even saw it on out of bounds plays, where there was a premium place on keeping Walter Clayton out of his spots. But the result was often Alex Condon, Micah Handlogton, Ruben Chinyelu ending up slipping towards the goal and having the low ground on whoever was rotating to help. That leads to a lot of layups, a lot of dunks. So that was what Florida survived on. That was what they lived on through that first half. And I thought that Alex Condon, while he struggled to look comfortable out there, wouldn't say he looked comfortable because I think he was still figuring out what to do. I think he is so good at just breaking down the game, of figuring out what to do, that he started to get into those spots more and more often and become helpful for that team. Houston, though, full credit. I mean, that was a masterful game plan. And they pulled it off because they were up at halftime. They had kept everyone out of foul trouble. And then you go into that second half and you think, okay, now is the time. Do they start mixing up coverages a little bit more and risk Walter Clayton getting hot? Or do they say, we just don't think that Florida can adjust fully to this because of Walter Clayton's limitations as a passer? Now, he had put up big assist numbers in that first half, so that was a risk too. Houston comes out. They do a lot of the same thing, but there was a shift in the second half. And it started with a momentum swing towards Houston, where Florida clearly set the tone in the locker room. I think that there was a real premium placed on physicality. And so, as it sometimes does, it crosses the line in order to send a message. And so there is no problem with those being called fouls. We saw Condon kind of just run through a couple of guys. We saw on plays coming across, whether it was Martin or Richard, just kind of leaving the shoulder out, making sure you got through. And again, not going to fully blame them for doing that. Not going to blame the ref for calling a foul. But it felt like in that moment, when the first time it happened, the referees, rather than identify that this is Florida trying to send a message to Houston that they can be physical too, instead, it felt like the refs reacted like the game was out of control. And I don't think it was. I think that we had had a really good defensive contest and one team felt the need to step it up. And so they were willing to ride up to that line to make sure where it was. But we quickly saw a head-scratching technical foul call for, we assume, the assistant coaches standing up, which, by the way, watch basketball at any level, the assistant coaches stand up all the time. Now, it's their job to then sit back down pretty quickly, but they jump up. Like it's part of basketball. You react. They didn't come onto the floor. They did not leave the coach's box. Todd Golden walked away from the play. The play which was on the other end of the floor, by the way. This was not in the face of any official. This was at least 30, 40 feet from anyone who could have made that call. So I don't know what was said. I don't know the exact reason that they assessed the technical, but it was a turning point in the way that the game was going to be officiated. The refs had committed to their stance that things had gone too far and they were going to take control. From that point on, we then saw a couple more calls that felt like, okay, it shifted. They're not going to let you just throw people around, bang down low. You're not going to get away with it. And so then there was a moment where Florida calls timeout. They come back out. And now Houston is up double digits. It feels like Houston is right on the edge of being able to put this thing away. Florida comes out and draws 3 fouls in 9 seconds from the defense. And I thought it was brilliant because as much as we want the game of basketball to be all about X's and O's and let's draw this up, let's call the right play, let's play the right defense, that's what we want basketball to be about. There are referees out on the floor and they have an impact on the game. And full credit to Florida because I will say this, I believe that they are national champions today because they were the first team and the best team at identifying the shift in officiating that took place in the second half of the national championship. They came out and they rewrote the way that they were going to take on contact, the way that they were going to play on both ends of the floor from a physicality standpoint. And it took Houston that extra minute to adjust. What happened during that time? JoJo Tugler picks up 4 fouls, and Javier Francis picks up 4 fouls. Those are your 2 lengthy power forwards that I just gave full credit. Maybe not full, but a huge piece of credit for shutting down Walter Clayton. Then what happens? Both guys have to go to the bench. Now, Terrence Arsenault is out there. Really good perimeter defender, but he does not have the size, the length, the physicality of that duo. So, what happens? Walter Clayton gets going. He knocks down some free throws. He hits a couple shots. Now, suddenly, he's in double figures. And Florida has mounted this comeback. And we're even headed down the stretch. And so I thought that that was as big as anything in this game was Florida's ability to identify the way that this game was officiated and shift on the spot in that huddle. Full credit to them, full credit to Todd Golden for being able to do that. Unfortunate for Houston because I do think the way that the game was being officiated, I think it would have still come right down to the wire. I mean, this game was going to be a classic regardless. And I think that the best thing that we can say is at least with a shift. You never want to see a shift in how a game is officiated. But at least with the shift, it swung too far one way and then too far the other, and it felt like it evened out. So we ended up evening this thing out. In the end, I don't think that refereeing itself is the story. I don't think that bad calls are the story. But the way the game was officiated is definitely a storyline and a big part of how this game did play out. Now, down the stretch, I don't think anyone deserves more credit than Alex Condon. He comes up with multiple steals on the defensive end. He, again, is a huge piece of what they do on the offensive end, whether it is facilitating at the high post, setting screens, getting to the rim. He did so many little things down the stretch, not just picking up the ball on the final play of the game. Multiple steals. Houston does not get a shot off in the last 3 possessions, and Alex Condon came away with the ball just about every time. Also, Thomas Houck, their power forward, going to shoot up draft boards because not just here, but through the whole season, and especially down the stretch, this dude just wins games. He makes winning plays every time he is on the floor. It doesn't matter if his shot is falling. It does not matter if he is involved in the offense. His ratings, go look at his analytics. When he is on the floor, the team is successful because he spaces the floor. He gets to the right spot. He always finds where he needs to be to make the biggest impact on both ends of the floor. Freak athlete out there. I think he's got a lot of high-end potential ranges in the NBA as well, which is why I think that some teams are going to start taking a real hard look at him this year rather than as a 2026 prospect, which I previously thought he was one of the best in that group. So Florida walks away with a national championship. Todd Golden has one at the age of 39. Walter Clayton gets the Most Outstanding Player award, and we move into the offseason. When we come back on the other side, we will talk through just briefly those final 4 matchups, how we got to that amazing national championship game right here on 3 True Values. Welcome back in to the second segment here on Three True Values. We got to walk you through because we had a show on Thursday. We got you ready for the Final Four, and then we kind of stepped away. Well, Friday, I guess, after dealing with some sickness over the past week. But regardless, we got you ready for the Final Four, and then we let it all play out. So now we've talked national championship. Let's talk about how we got there just briefly. Florida takes down Auburn to advance. We know that as they are now the national champion, but that was an incredible game as well. Auburn, of course, jumped out to a good lead in the first half, but it felt like entering that second half that Florida had what was in the tank, what they needed, if they could just unlock it. They, of course, were able to get that done. Walter Clayton goes on a crazy, crazy run. We've seen it throughout the tournament. And I believe it was the first player at that stage in the tournament to put up back-to-back 30-point games. He ends up with 34 on 18 shots. Just insane run for Walter Clayton. He deserves every bit of credit down the stretch. I thought that this one was another one where Thomas Houck just took over with his ability to make impact plays. Florida, I mean, they just this group I don't think can get enough credit because of how good they were as a team, how well they fit as a unit. I don't know if we've seen a 1 through 8, 1 through 9 group like this in a while in college basketball. Now, in the transfer era, we might see it more and more. These teams that can afford to pay for these big time rosters and then can get it to gel, sure, we could see this become a little bit more readily available of a thing. Hopefully we do, because this was such good college basketball that we saw over these past couple of days and in this Final Four in general. Look at this Auburn team on the other side. Janai Broome, maybe not at 100% through that one, but still was out there, was able to be an impact player, I thought, for them. Chad Baker-Mazara, of course, on the wing. He ends up having his ups and downs. It feels like that's always the way that his game goes. But the key, I thought, was Florida being able to limit the impact of Tahad Pettiford. If Auburn was going to get guard production, it was going to come from their freshmen and their wings, their defensive guys, the Elijah Martins, the Will Richards. They just made it hard for him. And so when he was seeing those more physical defenders, it did not go his way. And I thought that it ultimately, down the stretch of the game, tipped things in favor of Florida, who was able to get a little bit more rhythm, was able to close that one out. Then on the other side, though, wow, we had Duke and Houston. Now, I picked Duke to go through, and it looks like, of course, early, as we mentioned, Houston is going to come out and just punch you in the mouth. And Duke had to take the punch. It looked like they had kind of wobbled, but they got back up. They were okay. Cooper Flagg, again, looked incredible. He ends up having another big outing in terms of numbers. I thought that Kamen Malawak struggled a lot. He's a guy who had the size and the length, but the physicality was just not there to compete with a Jawan Roberts, with a JoJo Tugler, with Javier Francis. Those guys that we're talking about on this Houston team, I mean, they just bullied him left and right. He's a young guy. He's a guy who's going to fill out into his frame, who's going to figure out more and more as he plays more basketball against these bigger opponents what he has to do. But man, if you were looking for like short-term value, him heading to the next level and having an impact as a rookie, look out, because some of these veteran centers around the league are going to push him and shove him all over the court. So not his best showing. And then you didn't get the best Tyrese Proctor game. You didn't get the best of Cone Knipple for stretches of that game. But ultimately, I don't think that we can blame this on just a couple of players having a struggle. I think this was Houston going out there with probably 15 minutes to go and deciding we are playing for our season here. This is it. This is the final stand. We are down double digits. And if we want To win, the only way to do it is to get stops and get them in a hurry. They went out there and they responded. They delivered. It was stop after stop after stop. They went into all kinds of great defensive schemes, just competing at a higher level, wanting it more, getting on the boards, making sure that they cleared the possession each and every time. And Duke, you saw a little bit of that panic. You saw them fail to settle things, fail to get into an easy set, to get downhill and just draw a foul, stop the bleeding, rest, recover at the free throw line, pick up some points. They did not do that near enough down the stretch and end up only making one field goal in the last 10 minutes and 30 seconds. An insane defensive run by the Cougars. And even down the stretch, though, 6-point game with 30 seconds left, you feel like, okay, look, this was a great performance by Houston to kind of battle here, but Duke's just got to deliver. And for whatever reason, they did not look comfortable. It looked like the wear of missing so many shots, the wear of feeling that Houston physicality over those past 10 minutes, it really got to them. And then we get a questionable call on Cooper Flag. I don't think that it was a foul. It was, look, on those box outs, it's so tricky because guys are grabbing, guys are pulling or twisting, and there's all kinds of stuff going on. Okay, so I don't know. I don't know. I would not like to see that called there, but it felt like when it called, that last little string, that last little bit of composure that Duke was trying to rally, it felt like it fell. That felt like the breaking point where they said, okay, what are we going to do? How are we? This can't be happening. Houston goes to the line. Duke struggles to inbound the ball. More free throws. We've got Houston just mauling them on the offensive glass. And suddenly you're down. But you come down and you have a chance. You can win this game. You're down by one. Ball in Cooper Flag's hands. He goes to the baseline again. Now, this is interesting because this is clearly his favorite shot. This is the play that he wants to run because we've seen him run it at least 3 times now. He wants to kind of post up on the baseline, move towards the middle of the floor. That's what Cooper Flag wants to do on game-winning shots. It has not worked yet. He continues to miss these shots. Now, he did not fall down like he did the first time or the second time when he slipped. But this time he gets to the middle of the lane. He rises up, did not feel like he got great elevation against the more physical defender in Roberts, and he puts it off the bottom of the rim from, 10 to 12 feet. And it just didn't feel like the best shot he could have gotten. It felt like downhill, or even if he could have gotten into more of a step back, traditional step back motion. Create a little bit more space. You're the more athletic player. But instead, he ends up pushing out instead of up, and it ends up hitting the bottom of the rim. And so then, now we start the Cooper Flag clutch conversation. Now, is Cooper Flag not clutch because he's 0 for 3 here this season in these situations? Not necessarily. It's not a great sign. It's not what you want from your number 1 draft pick, future of the franchise type of guy, for sure. You want anything but that. But here we are. And I don't think it's something that can't be solved. Because again, I don't think that was the best play that they could have gotten off for him. So I don't think that this means that Cooper Flag will never hit a clutch shot in his career, but I think that it does put that little bit of a note that haters and people online are going to point to throughout his career and say, "Oh, remember at Duke? Remember at Duke? He wasn't clutch. He wasn't clutch there. Wasn't clutch in college." So it's going to follow him. But this guy's a different kind of athlete. At least everything he has shown to this point in his basketball career. So I'm not too concerned with it having a long-term impact, a long-term effect on who he becomes as a basketball player. I think that he will probably still go on to do great things in the NBA. But I do want to talk for just a second about the final play because it also confused me. And I think this is where John Shire is still a young coach. He's still a coach who is learning a lot of things, and he's a brilliant coach. He's got a lot of great ideas. But I thought that there was a swing and miss on this play, and I think I know why he tried to do it. As we know, fouling up three is a controversial but a widely used method to prevent game winners, or rather game tying plays that can send it to overtime. So Duke gets the ball down 3.7 seconds left on the clock. And they go to inbound. Of course, in college, you cannot advance the ball, which means they've got to bring it all the way up the court. Not a big concern, though, because general rule of thumb, you can get off one dribble per second if you're moving down the court, which then would leave you 0.7 seconds. That's plenty to get up a jump shot. So if you really want to feel safe, you can take two dribbles, but I think you can get all the way to the three-point line. Particularly with a guy like Cooper Flag, if you're going to put the ball in his hands, I think you can get all the way there. Instead, what Duke tries to do, they run the long play. And I don't have necessarily an issue with the long play either, because you've got Cooper Flag. You've got the best athlete on the floor. I think if you're going to throw the ball up in the air, you can throw it to him. Where I'm not sure whether the play broke down, if it was just not run correctly, or if it was called in a questionable way, is that they threw the ball. Cooper Flag had to go up to try to get it. But where he ends up on the floor is in front of his teammates. Now, if you're going to run this type of play, what you want to do is you want to throw it deep so that your player who is jumping up can catch and distribute back out towards the three-point line. You want those defenders to crash towards the ball thinking that they're going to make a play and leave that space for your shooters who are standing there ready to knock it down. Cooper Flag ends up off to the left and above the three-point line. So when he catches that ball, which he didn't even make a full catch, he had to kind of try to tip it. But when he tips that ball, he's now tipping it over his head the other direction so that someone else can try to tip it back out. Well, that ends up being guys having to scramble back behind him. Now Cone Knipple, the guy that you, I assume, wanted taking a shot, now he is inside the three-point line. So that does you no good. Tyrese Proctor is now rotating across. Cone Knipple able to at least get it off the floor and roll it back towards Proctor. That was good. But now Proctor catches the ball, and because he's moving back towards the three-point line as well, he's now facing away from the rim, and now we've run 2.5 seconds off the clock. So he's picking up the ball, and now he's got to turn and get it off in a second. It just felt like a waste of that 3.7 seconds. Now, maybe you were trying to avoid the foul up three. So you want to get it in and out of hands. You want to run it quick, but then throw it deeper. Throw it deeper. Let Cooper Flag go get it. Push it towards Cone Knipple. Now, it might have just not been the best throw. The guys might have run slightly to the wrong spot. I don't know exactly how it all played out. We wouldn't know that unless we were in the huddle. But it did not look like the play that it probably should have been if you were going to find success there. You end up with, at best, your third option to take that shot, having to take the most difficult shot possible. So that's the breakdown there of the Final Four of what we saw. But I do want to, before we end this segment, just talk a little bit about the Final Four and how great it was because it was an incredible showcase of college basketball, of everything that we have seen throughout this season. This proved, and I think the TV numbers are going to come back and say it in huge, huge ways. This is one of the best Final Fours that we have had in a long time. This was incredible basketball. This was everything you could ask for. And so people want to look at the transfer portal. They want to look at um, NIL. They want to look at the lack of Cinderellas. And everybody wants to proclaim that the sky is falling on college basketball and college athletics. They want to say it's over. There's nothing left to watch. There's nothing fun because that's what that's what you hear. And it sounds like the right thing to parrot, that it's not what it used to be. Okay, it might not be what it used to be, but it's still amazing basketball. There's still these incredible moments, these great teams. I just said I think that these teams might get deeper and better as we keep going forward. I think we're going to have more Final Fours like this where we end up with four elite basketball teams facing off against each other for the crown. And I think that's a good thing, not just for the sport, but for fans who are watching thinking, wow, this is truly a competition to see who is the best in the sport. I don't see how that is a negative in any way. We will talk, of course, through the off season, through the next season, for years to come. We're going to talk about what is right and wrong with college basketball. There's plenty that we can fix, plenty that we can address. But man, this sport is in a good place, and things look up after this Final Four. I think everybody can agree heading into this offseason, there's excitement around where college basketball is headed, regardless of what happens with the transfer portal, NIL, and anything else. When we come back in this other side, we are going to walk you through the way too early 25-26 rankings right here on Through True Values. Welcome back. As we wrap up today's show, we have put a bow on the 2024-2025 season, which means we can only do one thing. We can start looking forward to next year. That's right. Already, we have seen transfer portal additions. We have seen recruiting classes signed. We have seen coaches change destinations. So it's time to start looking at what next year's rosters will look like. Now, these rosters are not set. We will see players go to the NBA draft. We will see players enter and exit the transfer portal. We will see international prospects, a new part of the college game, who will arrive on campus throughout the summer. So this is a fluid list. Last year, I know it got into the double digits of updates that we saw for the way too early top 25. I expect it to hit at least that many this year. But we have gotten an early start, and it has provided a nice picture here. We can start to look at where teams stand entering next season. And so here I'm going to lay out a couple of the rules that I follow when I'm setting up my way too early top 25, which you can find at On3 and will be updated there, of course, with all the latest news and notes. First, on NBA draft decisions, they are considered back, all these players, unless they are ranked inside the top 25 of my current On3 draft big board. The reason for that is that generally players projected to go in the top 25, they all enter. There might be one or two that we have to add back to the list, but it's not going to be many of them, and it will be a big headline if it does occur. Other guys, though, are pretty 50-50 on whether we think they're actually going to go or not. So to sit there and try to figure out which ones will and which ones won't, more than a month ahead of the NBA Combine, more than a month ahead of the decision deadline for them to withdraw, it seems a little bit silly. So we're going to assume that they're back until they announce that they're going to the NBA. In terms of players with eligibility, if they have run out of standard years of eligibility, I am going to assume that they are gone. If they get a waiver, or it is announced that the NCAA has changed their mind, or they have granted them another year, then I will add them to the roster. But that's going to be on a case by case basis because the NCAA treats it on a case by case basis. Lastly, teams that do not have a full rotation of players, that's at least 7 for now. It will move to 8 or 9 over the course of the offseason. But of course, right now, everyone's still building out their roster. Over the course of that time, teams that do not have a full group are not going to be considered for the top 25. Because if we actually get to the season and they have that roster, they're not going to be a top 25 team. You cannot win with 6 players on your team. And finally, this one does not apply because we have wrapped up the coaching carousel for this season, at least at the high major level. But any team without a coach will also not be considered until they make a hire. So let's go ahead. Let's get into it. Let's just start knocking out some of these top teams. We've got at number 1, Houston on top. They lose LJ Cryer, Javier Francis, Jawan Roberts, and Malik Wilson. So you might say, whoa, that is a lot headed out the door. Are you sure that they can be the number 1 team in college basketball? And I am, because JoJo Tugler, of course, the perimeter and interior defender, who we talked about in the first segment and the second segment, could return. Emmanuel Sharp as well. Milos Uzan really took over down the stretch. I thought he grew a lot as a point guard. Terrence Arsenault, a versatile wing player as well. But here's where I think Houston gets a big boost. I think this is where this Houston team has a lot of juice to be the number 1 team in the country. Chris Sinnott comes in. Kingston Flemings coming in. Isaiah Harwell. 3 top recruits in the country, all coming to Houston. You add in transfer Khalifa Sacco, who can play center, who will add to the versatility of that front court. And I really like the core of what Houston has so far. Next up, we've got Duke, who could return Isaiah Evans, Caleb Foster. Tyrese Proctor is on the table as well. That's a guy who's going to have an NBA draft decision to make. Patrick Gamba, who showed flashes of being a really good center. We'll see if he can take the next step. Of course, the Boozer twins coming in. That's the big headliner there. They also bring in Kamania through the recruiting ranks, Shelton Henderson as well. They have more to do. They will fill out this roster as they lose, of course, Cooper Flagg, Konka Nipple, Common Malawak, and Sion James at the least. Alabama comes in at number 3. The reason for that is, well, sure, they lose Mark Sears, they lose Grant Nelson, Chris Youngblood out the door as well, Clifford Amori, and now Mo Diabate, who enters the transfer portal. But they do replace Diabate with Taylor Bowen in the transfer portal. I think that is a pretty like for like, and I think maybe a little bit higher upside in terms of what he can provide them in that unit. Noah Williamson comes in, a big-time scorer at center. Jaleel Bethea, a little bit of a rehab project. At one point considered a top 10 NBA draft pick in this year's draft. Did not pan out at Miami this year. Of course, a lot of issues at that school, losing a coach midway through the year. Not the least of what went wrong for the Hurricanes. So can Bethea rehab his stock as he comes in? And then 3 top 50 recruits join that team as well. But the key here, and why I have them this high right now, is that currently we're projecting that LeBaron Philon would return. He is not in the top 25 on my NBA draft board, which would put him right here, eligible to make a return. You add in Aiden Holloway, Darian Reed, Jaron Stevenson, Latrell Wrightsell, among some others who will be back next year, and this Alabama team should be primed and ready to go. Now, at number 4, a team that I've got a little bit higher than some other people that I've seen drop so far this morning. And I stick by it 1,000%. This team is one of the best in college basketball. And they've got a little bit more work that they're out there looking to do. They're not done yet. They could easily get to number 1. I'm not sure that they will, but it's in play. It is well within range, and that is Kentucky. Because Kentucky returns Otega Owe, who was a really high-level scorer for them, along with Brandon Garrison, a versatile center. They add Jasper Johnson, a Caden Lewis, Malachi Moreno in the recruiting ranks. Now, that is a big haul. I am high on Moreno. I am high on Lewis as well. Johnson, of course, could be that electric 6-man type of scorer that you can really rely on heavily to put up points. And then the transfer class so far. really like what they've done. Jalen Lowe, inefficient, but I think that surrounded by this group of talent, you could see more unlocked from him. He's a guy who was, again, projected to be a high draft pick entering the year and just did not take that leap from an efficiency standpoint to get there. Cam Williams, who is a little bit of a bring him in and let him develop type of guy, I think. He can really knock down the threes. He can play on the wing. Mo Diabate, who we know, high level defender, huge energy guy, going to bring so much to this Kentucky team, I think. I kind of jumped them a couple of spots when they got the Diabate deal done. And then Jaden Quaintance. How about getting a potential top 5 NBA draft pick to transfer in for his second year of college basketball because of his age? Should be a freshman this year, but has already looked really good, put up double doubles, and been an elite defensive presence in college basketball. I mean, this kid, I don't think that we're giving enough credit to how good Jaden Quaintance could be in his second year. This could be a huge season for him. So watch out for this Kentucky team. Yes, they lose Brea, Butler, Carr, Robinson, and Williams from that group, Almanar as well. But they have replaced it already pretty well, and they've got more on the way, I believe. Now, Louisville. This is controversial. I've got Louisville below Kentucky just barely. I mean, honestly, I could have called it a tie for fourth. I think that these rosters are about as even as you can get as they stand today. Because I love the addition of freshman guard Mikael Brown, Ryan Conwell, Isaac McNeely, and Adrian Woolley. I mean, that is the best backcourt in college basketball. I don't care. They are going to have the best backcourt in college basketball. Now, they lose a lot with Hepburn, Smith, Hadley, Edwards, but wow, that group right there. I list those 4 players. That is the best backcourt that you're going to find. Nobody's going to top that. And they also bring back Ali Khalifa, who redshirted but had really good stats in his college career prior to redshirting. James Scott, who was solid for them in the post. I think with Kobe Rogers, if he can return and be healthy, I think that would be a big boost for this Louisville team. And what I'm looking for them, they also have Connie Ruths, who's going to come back and presumably get better. I'm looking for a little bit more forward play. Give me one more power forward, small forward, who can go out there and be a versatile defender, who can take on big matchups. That's what I think this Louisville team is missing to be a true title contender entering next season. Love what they've done so far, though, with that roster. I think they're already pretty close to what they need. At number 6, we've got Florida. And we're riding a little bit high on Florida. Look, they're the national champions, defending champs coming into this thing. They lose Clayton, Martin, and Richard. That's going to hurt a lot. But if they can bring back a core of Denzel Aberdeen, Ruben Chinyelu, Alex Condon, and Thomas Houck, yeah, they're going to be a problem. You bring back the entire core around that group. When I talk about the depth of this team as one of the biggest factors in it having success, you bring back just about all of that depth. Like, those 3 are really the only 3. Obviously, Condon and Houck could receive some draft interest, but those 3, like, that's it. If just those 3 leave, look, they have the transfer portal to go out and add. They could be right back where they are quickly because these guys are going to take another step. Alex Condon kept getting better. Thomas Houck kept getting better. I really like what this team has. Also, 2 top 50 recruits coming in as well, CJ Ingram and Alex Lloyd. Iowa State comes in at number 7 because they bring back Taman Lipsey once again, Joshua Jefferson and Milan Monsilovic. They lose Gilbert, Jackson, and Jones, but they've already done a lot of work in the transfer portal, brought in Blake Buchanan, who will come into that front court, Mason Williams and Eric Mulder to fill out things as well. And Jamarian Bateman comes in as a freshman who could make an impact in that backcourt. At number 8, I've got North Carolina. I believe this is another team that I'm a little bit higher on than the rest of the pack, but I'll explain why. Because I'm not 100% sure how this roster is going to land, but as it stands right now, if they can return Seth Trimble, Drake Powell, Vin Allen Lubin, and bring in Jonathan Powell, Henry Vasar, and Caleb Wilson, now that is a high level rotation. Derek Dixon would be in that mix as well. I think you're talking about probably being one, two players away from a really, really solid group. I think that Vasar, getting him out of the portal, potential NBA type big, uh, that was their biggest glaring hole this year was the lack of a center. They now have filled that extremely well. Of course, Lubin would then play behind him, give him some versatility, some different looks that they can play. Jonathan Powell adds some veteran kind of needed leadership on that wing group. If you can get Drake Powell another year of development, Caleb Wilson, a 5-star recruit coming in to play power forward, I really like what they have started to do with this unit. Kansas. Now, Flory Badunga might be the only one coming back. They lose everything. Adams, Dickinson, Griffin, Harris, Mayo, Storr, Coit, they're all out the door. But they bring in Darren Peterson, and that's enough to get you into the top 10, I think, just off the jump as you continue to fill out this roster around him. It's going to be important how they build the roster, though. We've criticized Bill Self over these past couple of years, the way that he has put this roster together. I think it will be really important to see how he surrounds his star freshman. And number 10, we've got St. John's, where Zuby Ejiofor promises to return. Simeon Wilcher as well. Bryce Hopkins already added through the portal. Don't forget about him. Go back to his stats a couple of years ago. He's been injured. He's had some troubles staying on the floor. But when he has been healthy in the Big East, he has been dominant, a real Big East player of the year type of guy. And you add him to this group, I think, with Josen Sanan, committed, by the way, who is a high-level scorer who could benefit greatly from another year in college if he does not choose the NBA draft route. They do lose R.J. Lewis. That one's going to hurt. Kadari Richmond, of course, Aaron Scott as well, and Devin Smith. Brady Dunlap out the door, too. That's your top 10. And I'll run quickly through 11 through 25 as we get you out of here today. Not going to run through all of the incoming and outgoing players for each team. Just a quick note on the list below, but you can go check out all of the key additions, key returns, key departures at On3, where this is posted now. At number 11, we've got Michigan, as Dusty May continues to build that roster, has started again in the front court, got some really good things going there as long as they can keep everything in place. Some of those guys also looking towards the NBA draft. Purdue coming in at number 12. They bring in Oscar Clough. Love that addition with what they have. Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith both project to come back. UConn back up at 13. They have a really good recruiting class coming in. Silas Demery, I think, really a needed veteran addition to that backcourt. And Alex Caravan's still on the list of guys who could potentially return for next season. So that would be huge for them. Arkansas comes in. They return quite a bit, actually. A rarity for a John Calipari team. At least they project to. And, of course, they also bring in 5 stars Darius Acuff and Malik Thompson next season. For Auburn, they're just starting to put this roster together. It's not all the way there yet, but Chad Baker-Mazara and Tahad Pettifer both can come back. Abdul Bashir and Keyshawn Hall promise to provide them a perimeter scoring punch that they maybe didn't have this year. And then a couple of top 50 recruits in the fold as well. Creighton at 16. I really like what we saw from Jackson McAndrew down the stretch of the season. He returns. They bring in a center in Owen Freeman, Josh Dix, and Nick Graves transferring as well. Hudson Greer, an underrated recruit inside the top 50, who they add, and some international flavor on the way as well to that group. At 17, we've got BYU. Nothing more you need to say here. AJ DeBonsa is coming in, and he is ready to put his stamp on college basketball. This is a team that has a lot of upward mobility if he's able to fill out a roster around DeBonsa. Richie Saunders returning for that group as well. Tennessee already landing Jacoby Gillespie and Jalen Carey to their class. Felix Okpara returns. I think they've got enough to make you believe they're going to be back in the top 25 this year. Illinois in the mix. The Ivisic twins are going to be playing together. Kylan Boswell returns. Will Riley, could he make a return to Illinois? That would be huge for them, a second year for their young freshman. Wisconsin, who has started to add to their group, Nick Boyd, Austin Rapp, and Andrew Rohde incoming, with John Blackwell and Nolan Winter promising to return. Now, that is a solid starting lineup to get you going into the season. UCLA, who brings back Tyler Bilodeau, underrated Sky Clark and Eric Daly. I think those are really good players to have. Donovan Dent coming in, a big fan of his game, and then a couple of more transfers already on the way. Arizona at 22, Tobey Awaka, Jaden Bradley, Motias Krivas, injured this year, but if he comes back next year, remember, he was on NBA draft board as a potential first round pick entering the year. He would then play alongside Koa Pete. That would be huge for them. At 23, we've got Michigan State, who returns Jeremy Fears, Cohen Carr, Jackson Kohler, but they do lose quite a bit with Jace Richardson on the way out, Frankie Fiddler, Jaden Akins among them, Trey Holloman as well. Texas Tech, JT Toppin is back. That's what matters for them being in the top 25. Christian Anderson can also return. Kevin Overton could be back as well, but they do lose Darian Williams to the portal. That one's going to hurt. I don't know if it's fully ruled out that he makes a return. If he did, that would push them back up the board. And then finally, we round this out with Gonzaga, who has Braden Huff, Graham Ike, Braden Smith, and Steele Venters looking to be back next year. Jalen Worley transferring in already, and a top 50 recruit in Davis Fogel. So that's where we stand today. That's where we are. It will update. It will update today, probably tomorrow. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to see a lot of shifts in this top 25. So stay tuned out on 3. I will have the latest on all the moves, how it impacts the preseason top 25. Way too early rankings are so much fun to keep track of. I hope you follow along with me. And follow along with me on Thursday. We will have a coaching carousel special. That's right. We are going to break down the full cycle of coaching changes right here on 3 True Values. Thank you for tuning in throughout the season. We are now in off-season mode, but that does not mean we're shutting it down. We've got plenty of content for you along the way. We'll start on Thursday, and we keep on rolling with more and more shows to bring you. So thank you once again for tuning in. I'm your host, James Fletcher. We'll see you next time.